Greetings from Istanbul, dear YouTubers. This is Atilla Yeşilada, your loving host from the Real Turkey channel. And unfortunately, we're going to talk about Syria again. By itself, a very uninteresting and boring country. Unfortunately, it happens to border Turkey, and it plays an important role in Turkish politics as well as markets and the economy. I look at the brief but very bright past of the Real Turkey channel. I realized I did have the videos about Syria. What can you say? Needs must. Why are we talking about Syria? Because half of it is occupied by Assad, which doesn't like Turkey at all. The other half is occupied by Syrian Kurds, closely affiliated with PKK, which is a terror organization and the nemesis of Turkey. So if the Syrian war ends as it is, Turkey will be surrounded from the south by two enemies, and that's just not good. Our President Erdogan doesn't like to play defense, so he has proposed to the United States a safe zone in northeast Syria where Kurds live, where he proposes to resettle 1 million Syrian refugees. We have 4 million of them in Turkey. United States and the Syrian Kurds largely shrugged it off, delaying tactics, etc. So Mr. Erdogan gave a deadline to both Pentagon and the Syrian Kurds, by which time they should allow Turkish military to enter the area and establish a safe zone. If you look at the charts, the first one I copied from Bloomberg shows the geographical area over which Turkey intends to establish the said safe zone, the striped area. And there, at a cost of $29 billion, Turkey will erect towns, infrastructure, etc., to bring in 1 million Syrian refugees. Kurds, of course, don't like this plan because they will become a minority and Turkish military will control their lives. Once again, no one really cared much, not even experts. They said Erdogan is bluffing. In fact, on Friday, the American military delivered 300 truckloads of new weaponry to Syrian Kurds, which really infuriated Erdogan. He ran out of patience. And on Saturday, speaking to his caucus, camp, he said, "We finished our preparations. Within 48 hours, Turkish military will enter northeast Syria." Then, Turkish radio and television network called TRT reported Turkish troop movements close to the Syrian border. I personally have no doubt that Erdogan will deliver on his promise, because living in this country, it is full of graveyards with bones of those who didn't trust or believe Mr. Erdogan. So, with utmost confidence, I predict that the Turkish military will be in Syria next week. Obviously, the world is full of eccentric leaders: Trump, Bolsonaro, Duterte, Erdogan, Boris Johnson. Maybe Trump and Erdogan will exchange a phone call and this incursion will be delayed, but I'm not betting on it. I want to talk about not the military aspect of this campaign, but market and economic implications. Militarily, I'm sure Kurds will put up a valiant defense because this is their last stronghold. But, just Turkish militaries has such a superiority in numbers and armor that I don't think Kurds will be able to push back the military campaign. Markets will probably not take this operation very kindly. I understand that American Congress is extremely angry at Turkey for a variety of reasons, such as Turkey's purchase of Russian-made anti-missile systems. And I anticipate that sanctions threats will be brought out in the open again. Last time such an event occurred, the August of 2018, Turkish markets completely freaked out, driving the dollar TL pair to 7.23. Right now it's at 5.70. Turkish inflation soared to 40%, and Turkish corporates went into deep distress. Right now, Turkish economy is much more fragile than it was a year and a half ago. And another currency shock like that could be the end of the game as far as Turkish inflation and private sector companies go. Even if United States Congress doesn't do that, assuming there would be clashes and loss of life, as regrettable as that may be, Turkish retailers and corporations will buy hard currency. Already dollarization is rampant in Turkey. In last data week, retailers and corporates bought another billion, bringing up the total to $191 billion, or roughly 55% of the total deposit base. They will rush to hard currency deposits. There might be a small run on banks, and central bank reserves are simply not adequate to cover the cash needs of Turkish citizens. So that too could cause currency turmoil and deepen the lack of confidence among Turks in their leadership and the economy. There's another problem. The Syrian refugees Erdogan intends to resettle in the Kurdish lands have not migrated from that area. They're largely Arabs from the eastern section of Syria. So, this is not a done thing. United States, UN will not sanction it, EU will not sanction it, and Turkey would come under accusations of ethnic cleansing or ethnic relocation. Erdogan believes that this $29 resettlement bill will be paid by foreign donors. No one will pay a penny. Not unless United Nations Security Council passes a resolution. Even then, it's a big sum. So Turkey will be stuck with this $29 billion. I've put some tables down there. Turkey's foreign debt to GDP ratio is something like 65% of GDP. It's very high. Turkey doesn't have the wherewithal to borrow abroad because of its single B rating. The budget deficit in IMF terms is 200 billion liras over the last 12 months. That chart is already down there. And it's something like 5% of GDP. Further borrowing at home would crowd out the private sector. So who pays the bill? And if you don't spend that sum to pay for the food, shelter, electricity, etc. needs of Syrian refugees, who's going to control the unrest? I really don't know these facts. So far, Turkey staged 2 military campaigns in Syria, in Afrin and El Bab areas, which were much smaller, and the population, not in Afrin but El Bab, was much more welcoming to Turkish operations. This is going to be much different. Turkish military will need to reckon with the hostile population, potential terror attacks, sabotage, and Syrian refugees who are not familiar with the land and have come to expect new homes, new towns, infrastructure, education, etc. All of these are extremely costly. Turkish army doesn't have experience in this new geography, and Turkey doesn't have the money to pay for it. This is really a huge gamble for Erdogan, who has been squeezed at home by declining support by new rivals, as well as the fact that Turkish people, for right or wrong reasons, hate Syrian refugees. This is a do or die gamble for him. I'm afraid he goes in there with the right reasons, but he will not accomplish the political and economic objectives of this operation. To me, political turmoil is going to increase in Turkey, and we might have a government change pretty soon, probably within the next 6 months. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from, it was rainy a minute ago, now sunny Istanbul. And it's the Real Turkey channel. If you like it, please share it with your friends or your enemies. I don't care as long as they're alive. And subscribe to Real Turkey channel.